I have told this story exactly once, to the compact internal review panel under oath because they asked. I told it the same way I wrote it in the incident report on the morning it happened, plainly, in order, without leaving anything out. The panel chair read the report back to me, asked if I stood by every word, and I said yes. She closed the file without further comment. I have not told it since. I am telling it now because Sale asked me to, in a letter that arrived 11 months after she and her mother left Kethmoven. She wrote it in compact standard, which she had been learning from the Annex administrative corridor boards. The grammar was careful. The penmanship was exact. She said she had been thinking about the incident report and that she thought the story deserved to exist outside of a file. I agreed with her. She is almost always right about things like that. So, I am Tam Voss. I was, at the time, a civilian compact overnight perimeter watch officer, grade 4, assigned to the Transit Residential Annex at Kethmoven Joint Species Processing Station. 11 years in that posting. Before that, 7 years in corridor security at 3 different hubs across the Velsoren border cluster. Before that, 4 years as a transit intake registrar until I discovered I was better suited to nights. I have, in 18 years of watch work, been written up twice. Once for a documentation error in my 3rd year that I self-reported before the supervisor found it, and once for a handoff timing discrepancy that turned out to be the outgoing officer's fault, though I did not contest the write-up, because the discrepancy existed regardless of whose fault it was, and discrepancies should be on record. I had never, in 11 years at Kethmoven, fallen asleep on duty. This is the story of the night I did. The Kethmoven Transit Residential Annex houses what the compact calls sovereign adjacent delegations during extended processing periods. The language is careful. What it means is, people who are waiting for the compact's review apparatus to finish deciding something that matters enormously to them and their families, and who must wait in a designated facility because their status is under active determination and they cannot be elsewhere. During my 11 years at the Annex, I had watched families from 14 different species cycle through that corridor. Some waited weeks, some waited longer. The Velthoran Sovereignty Review Delegation had been in residence for 9 weeks when the incident occurred. I knew the delegation by its corridor sounds. Velthoran residential hours run late by compact standard time. Their homeworld cycle is longer, and they carry it with them even in transit facilities. The corridor was usually quiet by the 2nd hour of my watch, which ran from 2200 to 0600. The delegation's wing was the Eastern Corridor, 3rd Junction. I did my circuit checks at the top of each hour, and the Eastern Wing was always dark by 0100, all doors closed, all status indicators green. I did not know, at that time, that the small daughter of the sovereign representative had not been sleeping through the night for most of the 9 weeks they had been in residence. I did not know this because it was not in any file I had access to, and because the Velthoran delegation managed its own internal situation without bringing concerns to the Annex administrative staff unless the concern required formal action. This is their way. I have no criticism of it, I simply did not know. What I knew was the corridor, the filing desk at the watch post, which was positioned at the Annex's central junction with sightlines down all 4 corridors. The chair behind the desk, which was a standard compact tissue perimeter watch chair, not designed for comfort, specifically so that comfort would not become an occupational hazard. The low-level overnight lighting, which ran at 30%. The hum of the Annex's ventilation system, which was a sound I had stopped hearing years ago the way you stop hearing your own heartbeat. The hum and the dark, and 11 years of reliable nights. I do not know exactly when I fell asleep. My last logged entry was at 0217. The next logged entry was at 0451. 2 hours and 34 minutes of gap. That is what the log shows, and I have no reason to dispute it. What I know is what I found when I woke up. The watch post chair is a single-seat unit with fixed armrests and a straight back. There is no comfortable way to fall asleep in it. I have sat in that chair for 11 years and never found a position that made anything other than working in it feel natural. I had somehow, in 2 hours and 34 minutes of unplanned unconsciousness, come to occupy the chair in a way that gave my right arm a flat surface, because my right arm had been commandeered. The small alien princess of the second Velthorin house was asleep in my arms. She was curled against my right side, with her head resting on my arm just above the elbow. She was wearing a plain transit sleepsuit, dark gray, the compact tissue kind provided to all residential annex guests, not the house garments she wore during delegation hours. Her dark hair was loose. Her pointed ears, which during the day I had seen only from a distance when the delegation passed through the central corridor, were folded slightly forward in the way I had read, in the Velthorin species brief I reviewed at the start of their residency, indicates deep, restful sleep. Her face was completely still. Her skin, ash gray in the day cycle, had a faint luminescent quality in the 30% overnight lighting. I had not known Velthorin dermal bioluminescence was more pronounced in sleep. It was not in the species brief I had. She was approximately 6 years old. She weighed, resting against my arm, almost nothing. I did not move. This is not because I was confused, though I was. It is not because I was trying to make a decision, though I was doing that too. It is because I have read enough species behavioral briefings in 18 years of watch work to know that abruptly waking a sleeping child of any species in an unfamiliar location is rarely the correct opening move. I sat still and I assessed. She was breathing. Her color was normal. She was not in distress. She was asleep in a watch post chair at 4:51 in the morning, and she should not have been, but she was not in danger. I looked at the corridor. All 4 corridors were clear. The eastern junction was dark and still. The delegation's status indicators were all green. I looked at the desk log. 2 hours and 34 minutes of gap. I looked at the child. She made a small sound, a soft Velthorin exhale that the behavioral brief describes as a contentment vocalization occurring during deep, restful sleep, and she did not wake up. I made 2 decisions in the following 30 seconds. The first was to sit still until she woke on her own, because she was safe, she was sleeping, and she had clearly chosen to be here for reasons I did not yet understand. The second was that I was going to write exactly what happened in the incident report, and I was going to write it before I did anything else once she was awake and back in her wing, because a watch officer who falls asleep on duty and then manages the record to obscure that fact is not a watch officer anymore, and I had not spent 18 years building a record I was willing to end like that. I sat with the alien princess asleep on my arm, and I did my circuit check by visual scan. All corridors clear, all indicators green, and I waited. She woke at 05:22. Not gradually. Velthorin waking, I would later learn, is immediate. One moment she was asleep. The next moment her copper-amber eyes were open and tracking, and she was looking at me with the specific quality of attention that I have since come to think of as her assessment mode. Complete, quiet processing. She did not startle. She did not pull away. She looked at me for approximately 4 seconds. Then she looked at the corridor. Then she looked at the desk log. Then she looked back at me. "You were asleep," she said. Her compact standard was careful and deliberate, the way of someone who has been learning a language from written sources and has the grammar right but is still finding the spoken rhythm. "I did not want to wake you." "I know," I said. "I should not have been asleep." She considered this. The corridor was clear. I checked. I looked at her. "You checked the corridors." "I check them every time I come," she said, as though this were self-evident. "I come when the corridor is clear and the watch officer is awake and I can see all 4 junctions from the chair position. If anything changes, I go back." I thought about what she had just told me. I thought about it carefully. "How many times have you come?" I said. She counted in Velthorin first. I heard the subvocalization and then translated. 19. 19 nights. She had been coming to the watch post for 19 nights. I had logged all of those nights as uneventful, because I had not known she was there, because she had checked the corridors and moved in silence and returned to her wing before the circuit check and never registered in my logs at all. "You have been very careful," I said. "I have a system," she said. She said it the way someone states a technical fact. "I see that," I said. "Can I ask you something?" She looked at me. "Yes." "Why the watch post?" She was quiet for a moment. She looked at the desk, at the filing stack on the left side, at the low-level corridor, lighting running its long lines down all 4 junctions. She looked at the ventilation grill above the central junction, where the hum comes from. "It hums," she said, "and someone is awake, and nothing can come from any direction without you seeing it first." I did not say anything for a moment. "The dark in the residential wing," she said more quietly, "is quiet in a way I do not like. At home there is a sound outside the window. We have been here 9 weeks. I have not found the sound." I understood what she was telling me. She was 6 years old, and she had been 9 weeks in a transit residential annex in the middle of a sovereignty review that I did not know the details of, but that I knew, from watching delegations cycle through for 11 years, was the kind of process that puts weight on every person in the family. And she had not been sleeping. And she had found a room with a hum and a person awake, and a sightline down all 4 corridors. And she had built a system for coming to it safely. And she had come 19 times. "The hum is the ventilation main," I said. "It runs all night." "I know," she said. "I identified it on the 3rd visit." "Does it help?" "Yes," she said. "And you are awake, or you were. I owe you an apology for that." She tilted her head. It was the first time I had seen a Velthorin tilted head gesture, and I did not know then what it meant, though I looked it up afterward. It means something approximately equivalent to the query, "You are telling me something I should already know, please continue." "Watch officers are not supposed to sleep on duty," I said. "I have to write a report about it." She looked at the desk log. "Will it cause trouble for you?" "It may," I said. "That is separate from whether I should write it." She was quiet again. She had a quality of silence that is hard to describe, not a child's restless silence but a considered one, the kind that precedes a conclusion. "You are going to write it anyway," she said. "Yes." "Because a wrong record is worse than a bad one." I looked at her. "Exactly that." She nodded, a small, precise nod. "My mother says that too," she said, "in a different way. She says a record that does not say what happened is not a record. It is a decision pretending to be a record." I thought about that for a long moment. "Your mother is right," I said. "I know," she said. She said it simply, without pride, as a statement of confirmed fact. She slid down from the chair, which took her some effort because the armrests were at her shoulder height, and she landed with both feet flat on the floor. She straightened her transit sleep suit. She looked at me. "I will go back now," she said, "before the circuit check." "Wait," I said. She waited. "You said the dark in your wing is quiet in a way you do not like. That has been true for 9 weeks. "Yes." "You have been coming here for 19 nights. "Yes." "I am going to write the incident report," I said, "and I do not know what follows from it. But if nothing follows from it, or if what follows from it still leaves me at this desk, I would like you to know that you can come back." She looked at me for a moment. "On purpose," she said, "not as a system." "On purpose," I agreed. "You can knock." She considered this. I watched her consider it with the same thorough attention she had given the corridor layout. "I will think about it," she said. This was, I would come to understand, her version of yes. She went back down the eastern corridor in complete silence. The door of her wing's family suite closed without a sound. The status indicator stayed green. I sat at the desk for 4 minutes, watching the corridors. Then I opened the log, and I wrote exactly what had happened. The incident report was flagged to my shift supervisor by 0730. By 0900, I was in a meeting with the Annex Administrative Coordinator, a senior compact personnel officer, and my shift supervisor. The meeting lasted 40 minutes. I answered every question completely. I did not offer interpretations or mitigations. I described what happened and what I had done and what I had decided. The senior personnel officer asked me whether I wanted to amend the report. I said I did not. She asked me why. I told her what the child had said about records. There was a pause. The administrative coordinator said, "The child said that." "Yes," I said. Another pause. My shift supervisor, who has 12 years on me and a generally low opinion of meetings but a very high opinion of honest work, said, "He's been here 11 years. Read the rest of the log." They read the rest of the log, all 11 years of it. The outcome of the meeting was that the incident report would remain on file, unaltered and uncontested. I would serve a 2-week administrative review period during which my logs would be reviewed nightly by the shift supervisor. At the end of the review period, a determination would be made regarding continued posting. I said that was reasonable. The administrative coordinator asked if I had anything to add. I said, "The Velthoran child has been coming to the watch post for 19 nights. She does it because she cannot sleep in the residential wing, and the watch post has a ventilation hum and a sightline down all 4 corridors. She has been careful and her system has been sound. She should not be coming alone at night, and I should have a way to accommodate what she actually needs, which is a safe place to be when the residential wing is too quiet. I do not know if that falls within my authority to arrange. I am noting it because it is relevant, and because she is 6 years old and has been doing this alone for 19 nights during a sovereignty review that is, as far as I can see, adding weight to everyone in that delegation every day." The meeting was quiet for a moment. The administrative coordinator said, "I will speak to the delegation liaison." "Thank you," I said. The delegation liaison spoke to the sovereign representative's senior household coordinator, who brought the matter to the sovereign representative. I know this because the timeline was in a follow-up memo that came to my watch post log 3 days later. I do not know what was said in those conversations. I know only that the following evening, at 22:45, there was a knock on the outer frame of the watch post desk. The Velthoran princess was standing at the edge of the corridor light. She was in the same plain transit sleep suit. She had a small notebook under one arm. "I decided," she said. "Come in," I said. She came in and climbed the chair with the same effort as before, and settled against the armrest on the left side, which was the side with the best view of the eastern corridor. "You said I could knock," she said. "I did," I said. She opened the notebook. It was a compact tissue administrative notebook, the small kind that comes in the delegation welcome pack, and she had filled approximately 40 pages with what appeared to be orderly notes in both Velthoran script and compact standard. "I have been transcribing the corridor board postings," she said. "Administrative vocabulary. I am building a working file." "That is a good approach," I said. "My mother says the most efficient way to understand a system is to read its own language back to it," she said. "I have been here 9 weeks. I should have more of the language by now." "You speak it well." "I read it better than I speak it," she said, which was a more precise assessment than most adults give of their own language acquisition. She looked at the filing stack on the left of the desk. "What is in there?" "Transit movement logs from the past 6 weeks," I said. "I have been working through them during the quiet hours. There is a zone code indexing system that was updated at the start of the quarter, and the older entries need to be cross-referenced to the new format." She looked at the stack. She looked at the log I was currently working from. She looked at the indexing key I had written out on a separate sheet and posted above the desk. "Can I help?" she said. I looked at her. She was 6 years old, and she was asking to help with transit zone code cross-referencing at 10:45 in the evening in a transit annex watch post. "Yes," I said. I gave her the indexing key and explained the cross-reference system. She read the key twice. She asked 2 precise questions. Then she took the next log in the stack, opened it to the first entry, and began. She worked at half the speed I did, which was appropriate for someone learning the format, and she made 3 errors in the first hour, which she caught herself before I found them. She corrected them without comment. By the second hour she had the format and her error rate had dropped to 0. We worked until 01:30. She was fading by then. The Velthorin copper-amber eyes were losing their focus, and her penmanship, which was extremely precise, was starting to drift at the right margin. I said we had made good progress and she should go back. She closed the log she was working from and aligned it with the edge of the desk. "I will come back tomorrow," she said. It was not a question. "The knock is good," I said. She nodded and went back down the eastern corridor. Her name was Sale. I did not know her name then. I learned it on the 4th night when she introduced herself formally, which involved both her given name and a house designation that I did not have the Velthorin context to parse at the time. I wrote the given name in the log because it was relevant to the record. I wrote it exactly as she pronounced it. She came back 22 more nights. We finished the zone code cross-referencing in the first week. She found 2 category errors in the backlog that I had not caught because the error was consistent across 4 entries, and consistent errors are harder to see than isolated ones. I logged the corrections under both our names. She was very precise about this. She wanted to know whether the log format had a field for co-correction, and I told her it did not formally, but that I could note it in the supplementary remarks field. She said that was acceptable. She also wanted to know how long the backlog had been sitting. 3 weeks, I said. Why? The officer responsible for this review segment transferred to another annex. The work stayed. She looked at the stack. That happens often. Often enough, I said. The queue does not transfer with the officer. The new officer inherits the backlog. She thought about this in the considered way she thought about most things. That is a structural flaw, she said. The work should be attached to the record, not to the person. Then the handoff is clean. I looked at her. That is a better system than the one we use. You could propose it, she said. I could, I said, or a future administrative law practitioner could. She looked at the supplementary remarks column where I had logged her name. Both, she said. After the zone code work was done, she asked what was next. I told her about the Transit Movement Alert Archive, which was a running backlog of flagged but unresolved movement notifications that required manual review and either clearance or escalation. It was 6 weeks deep because my predecessor on the review task had transferred to another station mid-project and left the queue partially completed. She looked at the archive index and said it appeared to have an organizational flaw in the sub-flagging structure that was making the manual review harder than it needed to be. She was right. We spent 2 evenings rebuilding the sub-flagging structure before we touched the backlog proper. She sat beside the desk with the index and the flagging protocol and worked through the logic of it systematically, asking questions about what each flag category was supposed to catch and why the current structure was failing to distinguish between them. The problem, she concluded, was that 2 of the flag categories shared an overlap condition that the original design had not accounted for, so entries that triggered both flags were falling into a middle tier that had no assigned review priority. They are both right and neither is answered, she said. Yes, I said, that is exactly what happens. You need a precedence rule, she said. When both flags are active, the higher priority flag absorbs the entry. That clears the middle tier. I checked this against the Annex's administrative protocols. The precedence rule structure already existed in a different section of the same document. Nobody had applied it to the alert archive because the section was labeled for transit instrument disputes, not movement notifications, and the connection was not obvious. It was obvious to her on the second reading. She designed the revision. I implemented it. After that, the review moved twice as fast. She did not talk much during the working hours. She worked, and when she had a question about a process or a term, she asked it, and I answered it completely. Once she had the answer, she returned to the work. This was not unfriendly. It was simply how she functioned, and I respected it. It was also, if I am being precise about it, the way I function, so we fit the quiet hours without needing to negotiate it. She talked more in the stretch between 02 and 03 when the annex was fully still, and the ventilation hum was the only sound, and the corridor was long and dark, and not requiring active attention. In those hours she told me things in her careful compact standard, usually while looking at the Eastern Junction rather than at me. The way people talk when they are not quite ready for the conversation to be a conversation and need somewhere else to put their eyes. She told me about Velthorin, which she called home, and described in terms of its sounds first. The hum frequency of the transit ring above the capital, the specific tone of the morning convergence bell in the house district, the sound the great trees make in the night wind when all the leaves are moving at once. She told me that at home she could always find the sound from her window, and that the sound told her the night was continuing the way it was supposed to, and that the absence of it here was what made the residential wing too quiet. "It is not the silence," she said. "It is the wrong silence. The silence at home has a shape, I know. This silence is the wrong shape." She told me about the house where she lived with her mother and the household staff, and the 2 bonded animals her mother kept. She described the animals with precision, their size, their coloring, the specific behavioral patterns she had observed across years of close attention. She said the older one slept in the corridor outside her room, and that she could hear its breathing from her bed, which was another of the sounds she had not replaced. She told me that the sovereignty review had started before she was old enough to understand what it was, and that she understood most of it better now, but still not entirely, and that the part she understood least was why it was taking so long when the answer seemed, from the documents she had been able to read, fairly clear. I told her that institutional processes have their own timelines, and that the timeline and the answer are often 2 separate things. She said that was a design flaw. I said it was. She told me, on the 9th night, that her mother had not been sleeping well either. "She does the 4th-hour walk," Sale said. "She goes to the window and looks at the corridor for a long time and then goes back to bed. She thinks I do not know. I know because I am awake too." "The 4th hour is hard," I said. "Is that when you fell asleep?" she said. "Close to it," I said. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said the thing she had said before when I told her about the incident report, but she said it now differently, not as an observation, but as a conclusion she had been working toward. "I think you fell asleep because I had been there for a while and the corridor was clear, and you knew it was clear and you stopped having to think about it. The watch becomes quieter when nothing is wrong. You knew nothing was wrong." I thought about that carefully. "I think you may be right," I said. "That does not excuse it." "I know," she said. "I'm not saying it excuses it. I am saying it explains it." "Those are different things." She looked at the corridor. "Records do not make distinctions between excusing and explaining. That is why people are separate from records." She paused. "My mother says that a record says what happened. A person says what it means. You need both." I sat with that for a long time. "The incident report says what happened," I said. "Yes," she said, "and you are saying what it means by not amending it. They work together." I had not thought of it in exactly those terms. I thought about it now. You should be in advisory work when you grow up, I said, or law. Administrative law, she said, which was the answer I had expected from the moment she started reorganizing the sub-flagging structure. I have decided. I made the decision on the 6th night. Why the 6th night? Because that was when I understood that the alert archive had a precedence rule solution in a different section of the same document, she said. It was already there. It had always been there. Nobody had connected it because the label was wrong. That is an administrative law problem. I want to work on problems like that. You will be good at it, I said. I know, she said. She said it not with pride but with the certainty of someone who has done the assessment honestly. But thank you for saying it. She looked at the eastern corridor, the long dark line of it running back to the delegation wing, and her mother's window, and the 4th-hour walk. I think she will sleep better soon, Sale said. The review is nearly finished. Dov Sale told me there is a closing session being scheduled. Dov Sale was the compact diplomatic liaison assigned to the delegation. I knew the name from the administrative routing on the delegation's correspondence. I did not ask how she knew. That is good news, I said. Yes, she said. She picked up her notebook and reviewed the last page of notes. She had been adding to the administrative vocabulary file throughout the evenings, pulling terms from the Transit Alert Archive and the Zone Code cross-referencing and the various procedural documents I had walked her through. The file was now, by my count, approximately 90 pages. I will finish the vocabulary index before we leave, she said. I want it to be complete. Take your time, I said. We may not have much time, she said. After the closing session, they usually schedule departure within a week. Then we will work on it, I said. She nodded and went back to the file. The closing session of the Sovereignty Review was held on the 43rd day of the delegation's residence. I know this from the administrative memo that went to all annex watch posts because the scheduling affects corridor traffic and security rotation. I read the memo on my OAT 2200 handoff and noted it in the log. Sale did not come to the watch post that night. I sat at the desk and worked through a routine transit log review, and the ventilation hum ran its long note down all 4 corridors, and the annex was quieter than usual, which I had not thought was possible. The following night she came at OAT 2310, which was later than usual, and she was carrying the notebook and also a second, smaller notebook that was new. She put the new notebook on the desk. The vocabulary index, she said, complete. I picked it up. It was 97 pages, numbered, with an alphabetical index at the back covering all the compact administrative terms she had encountered and compiled across 22 evenings of work. Each entry had the term, the source document, a definition, and where applicable a note on usage variations she had observed across different filing contexts. The cross-references were exact. This is a professional quality document, I said. It is a working document, she said. It still has gaps. But I know what the gaps are, and I know where to fill them when I encounter the relevant sources. That is the most useful kind of document there is, I said. She looked at the filing desk. The Zone Code archive was cleared. The Transit Alert backlog was cleared. There was nothing on the desk except the current night's log and the standard procedural reference binder. What are you working on tonight? She said. Nothing in particular, I said. The backlogs are done. Tonight is just the watch. She sat down in the left side chair position and looked down the eastern corridor for a while. The closing session went well, she said. My mother was, she paused, searching for the right compact standard word. She was what she is when the difficulty is finished, and she has not yet decided how to be without it. Relieved, I said. More than that, she said, but that is part of it. We sat in the hum for a long time. She was looking at the corridor. I was looking at the log. Outside the annex, the transit station ran its night cycle. the movement of freight and travelers, and the ordinary commerce of a junction hub continuing without awareness of the small drama of a sovereignty review that had held a family in a transit annex for 43 days. At 01:17, she said, "My mother wants to meet you." I looked at her. "She asked me about the watch officer," Sale said, "the one who wrote the incident report the way he did." I told her what you told me about the record. I was quiet for a moment. What did she say? She said she wanted to meet the person who taught her daughter that a wrong record is worse than a bad one by having a bad record himself and not making it wrong. Sale looked at me with the particular quality of attention that I had come to recognize as her considering whether to say the next thing expression. She said it in Velthoran, which is more precise, but that is the compact standard equivalent. "I see," I said. "She will come at the 5th hour tomorrow morning," Sale said, "if that is acceptable. She knows that the watch post is your post, and she asked me to ask whether the time was acceptable before she simply arrived." I thought about a sovereign representative asking a grade 4 watch officer whether it was convenient for her to visit. "The 5th hour is fine," I said. Sale nodded. I told her it would be. She arrived at 05:10, alone, in a plain gray house garment without house markings. She was tall, the way I had noted when the delegation passed through the central corridor in their formal capacity. But in the plain garment and the overnight corridor light, she looked like a person who had been carrying a great deal of weight for a long time, and had recently put most of it down, but had not yet adjusted to the difference. She looked at the watch post. She looked at the desk, the filing stack, the indexing key still posted above it from the zone code project. She looked at the chair on the left side. "She sits there," she said. It was not a question. "Yes," I said. She stood at the edge of the desk rather than taking the chair. I did not ask her to sit. She looked like she needed to stand. "I have read your incident report," she said. Her compact standard was formal and precise, the same vocabulary base as Sale's but with the full fluency of long practice. 3 times. "It is a straightforward report," I said. "It is an honest report," she said. "Those are not always the same thing. In my experience, they are often in conflict." She looked at the log, which was open to the current night. "My daughter tells me that you told her a wrong record is worse than a bad one." "Yes." "She told me that you explained to her that you were going to write it down exactly as it happened before you addressed anything else." "Yes." "And then," she said, "when the administrative meeting asked whether you wanted to amend the report, you declined." "Yes." She was quiet for a moment. "She has told me everything about the evenings, the zone code work, the transit alert archive, the vocabulary index." She looked at the corridor. "She showed me the index last night. It is a very good document." "She built it herself," I said. "I was a reference source." "She said you told her it was professional quality." "It is." "She has been telling me that for 2 days," she said, and for the first time there was something in her voice that was not formal, something that was simply a mother who had heard her daughter repeat a compliment she valued. She does not take compliments easily, especially on work product. "It was accurate," I said, "not a compliment, an assessment." She looked at me. "She is going to understand the difference in a few years," I said. "She may already." The sovereign representative of the second Velthoran house stood at the edge of the watch post desk in a plain gray garment in the 5th hour of the morning and said, "Yes. I believe she does." She reached into the pocket of the garment and produced a small object, which she placed on the desk between us. It was a Velthoran notational tile. I recognized the format from the species reference material, the kind of small carved ceramic square used for formal house acknowledgement. This one had house markings along the edge, very fine, and a single notation in Velthoran script in the center. "It says, in the formal register," she said, "that the second house holds a debt of right conduct to the person named, whose record says what happened. I looked at the tile. I am not familiar with that designation, I said. It is old, she said. It is used when the debt is not material. When what was given cannot be repaid in any form that makes sense, except by the acknowledgement that it was given. I looked at the tile for a long time. Your daughter did not sleep, I said. She found a room with a hum and a sightline, and she built a system, and she came 19 times before I knew she was there. I did not do anything except fall asleep and then tell the truth about it. You fell asleep, she said, because she was there and the corridor was clear and you had stopped having to think about it. She told me. A pause. She also told me that when she said it to you, you said she might be right. She was right, I said. A man who can be right about a thing and say so, the sovereign representative said, is rarer than the record system suggests. She picked up the tile and placed it in my hand directly, which is, I have since learned, the formal Velthorin method of making the acknowledgement personal rather than procedural. Her hand was steady. The tile was warm from her pocket. Her name in the formal register is Sail Voreth Keth, second daughter of the sovereign of the second house, she said. She has decided to add your name to her personal record as a person whose conduct the record should preserve. I wanted you to know. I looked at the tile. Tell her, I said, that the vocabulary index goes in my desk drawer, not in the filing stack, because it is a reference document in active use and active use documents belong where you can reach them without standing up. The sovereign representative looked at me. That is where it is, I said. Left side drawer, I moved it this morning. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, in compact standard, something I cannot exactly reproduce because my Velthorin is non-existent, and she said it first in Velthorin before translating. The place where the light is the right height, and the sound is constant and you can see all directions. That is the watch post, I said. That is also what Sail calls it, she said, when she talks about it to me. She says it in Velthorin because she has not found a compact standard equivalent. She looked at the corridor. I believe that means she intends to find one. She said goodbye in the formal register. She went back down the eastern corridor in the same steady, unhurried way she had come. I sat at the desk with the Velthorin notational tile in my hand, and the ventilation hum running its low note down all 4 corridors, and the annex coming up toward its day cycle, the lights beginning their slow rise from 30% toward full. And I thought about a 6-year-old child who had checked 4 corridors 19 times in the dark, because the dark in the residential wing was too quiet. And I thought about the watch post as a place where the light is the right height, and the sound is constant, and you can see all directions. And I thought about the incident report sitting in the administrative file exactly as I had written it. Not a word changed. I thought about records that say what happened, and people who say what it means. Then I opened the log and wrote the morning entry the same way I have written every morning entry for 11 years. The time, the corridor status, any events requiring notation. The only event requiring notation was that I had met the sovereign representative of the second Velthorin house at 0510, and that she had given me a formal house acknowledgement, and that the delegation was expected to depart within the week following the closing session of the Sovereignty Review. I wrote it plainly, in order, without leaving anything out. They left 6 days later. Sail came to the watch post on the last night, at 0:23 in a few minutes, and she did not bring the second notebook because the vocabulary index was in the left side drawer of the desk, and she had decided that was where it belonged. She sat in the left side chair and looked at the eastern corridor, and we worked through a new transit log, and did not say much, and the ventilation hum ran its note, and the corridors were clear. At 01:15, she closed the log she was working from and aligned it with the desk edge. I will finish this section on the next visit, she said, if there is a next visit. Kethmuven is a common transit junction, I said. I know, she said. I have reviewed the routing tables. She climbed down from the chair. She looked at the watch post, the desk, the filing stack, the indexing key, the corridor sightlines. When I have the language correct, she said, I will find the compact standard equivalent for the watch post, what my mother said. Take your time, I said. She went back down the eastern corridor, carefully and quietly, the way she always went. I watched the corridor until the door of the family suite closed, and the status indicator turned green. The administrative review concluded at the end of the 2-week period. My shift supervisor submitted her assessment, which I was shown before filing. It said that my 11-year log was consistent and thorough, that the incident report was an example of accurate self-documentation and should be read as such, and that the sleep event occurred under circumstances that the supervisor characterized as a human constant rather than a character flaw, and that in her professional opinion the annex was better served by the continuation of my posting than its termination. I was retained. The incident report is still on file, unaltered. I have never asked for it to be amended, and I do not intend to. The Velthorin notational tile is in the right side drawer of the watch post desk, not the filing stack. The right side drawer, where the things I reach for without looking are. The vocabulary index is in the left side drawer. The letter arrived 11 months later. It was postmarked from the Velthorin Home District, Second House Administrative Quarter. The penmanship was exact and the grammar was careful, and she signed it with her full formal name, and then, underneath, in smaller letters, the compact standard phrase she had been looking for. Safe watch. She had found the equivalent. I wrote back the same day. I told her the transit alert backlog was clear, and the zone code archive was still running cleanly, and that the annex had a new delegation in the eastern corridor, a compact adjacent species I had not encountered before, and I had pulled their species brief and read it completely before the first circuit check. I told her the vocabulary index was still in the left side drawer. I told her the hum was still the hum. She wrote back in 3 weeks, which is fast for interstellar mail. She said she was glad the index was in the correct place. She said she had been admitted to a compact administrative law pre-qualifying program, and that the admissions review had noted the transit zone code cross-referencing and the transit alert archive sub-flagging redesign as evidence of practical methodology. She said she planned to cite the watch post as formative professional environment in her graduate application. I think she was not entirely joking. The corridors are clear. The hum runs all night. The light is the right height and you can see all directions. Some things deserve to stay exactly as they are.